Welcome to Wildspire. You get to be a fly on the wall for my intimate conversations with entrepreneurs who are changing the world. I'm your host, Stephanie Benedetto, coach, storyteller, and unmarketer at The Awakened Business, helping coaches and change-making entrepreneurs unleash their inspired message and share it with playful unmarketing. I'll ask curious questions and explore uncharted waters with my guest today. Anything can happen when we step into the unknown of infinite creativity, and that's where we're going to play. My guest today is Alex Baisley. Alex and I tempt fate by having no set topic or agenda before launching into our conversation. So you're going to get a raw and real experience. The result? We invent the concept of unbusiness, discuss what most coaches get wrong, and explore the questions to unlock your big dream. And of course, we have lots of fun. Let me tell you a little bit more about Alex Baisley. Alex Baisley, with his Big Dream program, is a consultant who shares a strategy for how folks with too many interests and a desire that won't seem to go away to make a difference in the world might figure out WTF they're supposed to be doing. Alex had spent 10 years working underwater as a commercial diver. Even though the two things he hated most were being cold and alone, he felt there was something he was supposed to be doing, and this certainly wasn't it. Years later, he unexpectedly stumbled into his passion, Reiki, a vocation infinitely more meaningful to him, and eventually left the ocean for his own warm, full-time clinic. So far, so good, until several years later, he was alarmed to feel increasingly unhappy every day walking to his clinic. What the hell was wrong? On a spring afternoon, a story came to him, and what he'd been missing became clear. He has never questioned his calling since that day. His Big Dream program hit the road around North America a few months later and struck a resounding chord. He's been sharing his message around the world nearly 20 years since. So it's my pleasure to introduce you to my delightful conversation with Alex Baisley. Hello, Alex. Welcome to Wildspire. I'm so thrilled to have you as my guest today.
Hello. I'm so glad to be here. How fun.
It is, and it's taken a little while for us to make this connection happen. And a couple of helpful people, matchmakers, putting us together.
That's right.
And
That's
I'm
right.
glad that we did. So I love to share, what stood out to me about you when it was Tad Hargrave who said, I think you should talk to Alex Baisley. I think you guys would really like each other. And I went to your website and I watched the story of two barbers, I think it was. And I don't even remember, this was some months ago. I don't remember the details of the story. But I remember you, and I remember just feeling this this playfulness from you or through you, this love of storytelling, and this big heart.
I'm glad you felt that.
Yeah, and I thought, yeah, Tad was right. Talking to Alex is a good idea. So that's kind of what has brought us here. And I'm wondering, what are you really seeing new and fresh in your life, Alex? What's standing out as something that is really speaking to you these days?
I can give some credit here to our other matchmaker, Jen Kelly, in this conversation. A fantastic person, and as I mentioned in an email to you, an impressive way to see the world differently. I always pay attention to what she says, but she asked me a question the other day, and actually, if Jen is listening to this, I don't think I've responded to it yet because I'm still thinking about it. But she asked if I was a yin sort of coach, a conversation sort of between yin and yang, and I have yet to actually come up with an answer for that, but I think there's a lot of truth to that. And if you ask me what was the most fresh in my life, it is a growing awareness of that is how I like to be in a coaching conversation. I'm not even sure if I like the word coaching, but anyway, coaching conversation. I'm a coach, for lack of a better term, but which sounds like I don't know, it's got a masculine sort of feel to it, I think, often. Like I'm coaching someone as if it's an action sort of thing, where for me, I've been at it for a year, like a long time, but it's only in later years that I'm becoming a little more aware of what I'm doing, and how it maybe stands out a little bit from how others do it. It's like I'm a gardener. My wife is a gardener. I don't really have a green thumb, but I'm surrounded by gardens and gardeners and people who grow their own food, and it's just all around me, and I adore it. I'm not very good at it myself, but I love it as a metaphor, as an analogy. And in my work, people come to me because my view of it is that they've got seeds in their garden that are trying to get out. And is there some environmental condition, some climate, some treatment that a person could give, some water, some nourishment, something to help the seed get out? So like the person has already come complete in my mind. And in what way, is there any way, in fact, that I can help along with other influences in their lives to help get that seed out? And I guess that's I'm kind of rambling already, aren't I? But that is something I'm very excited about, is this whole, let me go on a little bit more. The self-help industry, which is very tied with coaching, has been like a lot of the motto or the underlying metaphor, whether it's realized or not about it, is that it's like you're looking at a tomato plant and you're telling the tomato plant if they do something differently, they're going to grow more successful. And the tomato plant is thinking, the fuck? Like I'm a tomato plant. I do, whatever the inside things are. And so like the self-help industry, I kind of think people are the same. And so they're telling us if we do this differently and that differently, we'll have a successful life. And to a certain extent, there's true. I'm not against the yang approach, but I'm thinking more that environmental conditions, if you take that tomato plant and you look at it and it's in the wrong soil, it's got the wrong light, it's got the wrong environment, and so if we change those things, then the tomato plant has a chance to grow quite naturally and do what it's supposed to do and grow in ways you can't even predict. And I don't think the self-help industry has necessarily done a great job in helping with that. If anything, sometimes it's hurt it. And I think that coaching can regrettably fall in the same category. So about the yin, so about the environmental conditions for growth. And that is not about me. It's about the seed that, it's not even about them. And sometimes it's about the seed that's inside them that won't go away. You're helping people create businesses a lot of the time, aren't you, Stephanie? Mm-hmm. So it must be, that's a lot of your work. So it must be the same for you. They've got this urge inside them that's not fully defined, and they're trying to get it out.
I'm really curious about this, Alex, like what it is for you so they don't even necessarily know the seed, right? They might have a sense of the seeds, and they're seeds. There's something about that metaphor of seeds that not every seed you plant is going to grow. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you plant a bunch of seeds and then you see, and sometimes you weed through. I mean, if we're going to use this metaphor, I think it seems pretty apt to me.
But we'll take it until it causes problems and we have to choose a new one.
Perfect. I love that.
We run into the corners and dead ends.
We'll go, okay, that's it. We got to the end of this usefulness. Well, it's better than what I often do, which is I switch metaphors mid-sentence. And, I'm talking about gardens and all of a sudden I'm like, I'm climbing a mountain and okay.
Wait a minute. Am I building a fucking tomato plant or a mountain? I don't even know what I'm doing anymore.
Yeah. So what do you see? So that's I see that too, Alex. I see that innocently, someone wants to create something or make a change in their life, and they go to an expert, a coach, a teacher of some type. And the teacher gives them this system. And if you just do these 5 things that worked for me and they've worked for everybody else, so they better work for you, or there's something wrong. You're not doing it properly, right? There's something wrong with you. Then you'll get the same results without recognizing who this person is, what it is that they want, without being connected deeply to the inner wisdom and guidance that that person has access to.
Beautiful. I love it.
So they end up, and I think actually innocently on the part of a lot of these teachers and coaches too, because they believe that what they're teaching is what people need. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they say, if you have a tool that's a hammer, you assume that every problem is a nail, and you just, it's like the same. Great. And that's kind of what they're doing, right? Like, oh, well, I cracked the code. But what actually happened was they were struggling in their own life with whatever challenge, and they slowed down enough to listen to their inner guidance. Something occurred to them, intuition, inspiration came. They tried something, probably tried and failed a lot along the way, and finally found something that's working for them. And then they went, Eureka, I found it. Now I'm going to sell this to you, right? But the real power behind that was that inner knowing or that inner inspiration. So unknowingly, they're doing this, right? And what I hear you saying is a different approach. So like the person's coming to you complete. There's something already here, and your job is to be like the gardener. We're going to put it into the right soil. We're going to give it the right nourishment, the right amount of sun and things. So tell me more about like that. Like, what does that look like for you? Like, what's actually happening with people, and what do you help them to see and change?
It's great. There's a metaphor. I was just talking, speaking of metaphors, I was just talking with my wife about, I said, help me get clear on this metaphor, because she's the gardener. And it's like, I'll use myself as a tomato plant this time. It's like I'm a tomato plant, and every other plant in the world is a different kind of plant. So they're coming to the Big Dream program, to my classes or as clients, or my membership site, but what I've actually got in there is not a bunch of tomato plants. I haven't got a single one. I'm the only one there. I've got a broccoli and an asparagus and an amaryllis flower, and people are as different as that on the inside. And I'm not trying to be funny about it. I really do find them as different from each other as that. And so, my wife was telling me that I think it's asparagus, if I'm remembering the story right, that when you plant asparagus, it takes years for the thing to actually surface. Like it takes forever. Whereas if you plant an amaryllis bulb, as many of you have seen at around Christmas time, like the thing is a full completed unit in about 10 days, 2 feet high, incredible. And there was nothing wrong with either of those plants. They just have a completely different process. And different environments for that matter too. But so I'm never assuming that I know what's right, for this asparagus plant or for this broccoli plant that's in my class. But I do think there are predictable environmental ingredients. So I do bring structure to what I teach, and I only have one opinion in the world on what that structure, might be. And then there are many other opinions. But I do think that, for a plant, there's generally a few ingredients that one must have to take into account, and then they have to figure out what they need of those ingredients. So what kind of soil, what kind of light, and all of that. What it actually looks like, though, on the surface is, well, I suppose deep underneath this work, it's not about business for me or about big dreams. I run the Big Dream program, and I'm sitting here telling you it's not about big dreams. And the big dreams in a lot of these people's cases are a business or a form of making some kind of a contribution in the world, or an expression in the world, like an artistic expression in the world. And they don't know what it is, but they feel the urge so strongly that it just never goes away, and they're just trying to find this way out. And I've always thought that these urges are a piece of us inside that is attempting to heal our lives, that is trying to bring some kind of healing to us. So I had this saying that I sometimes bandy around, that the big dream is a message from our heart to our head saying, walk towards that, and you'll become who you want to be in the process of getting there. It never was about the big dream, but likewise, it's not about ignoring the big dream, because the heart is saying, no, if you walk towards that, it's going to challenge you in ways that you will never challenge yourself otherwise. And I know that you want it badly enough that you are going to wander through comfort zone changes and kind of do what it takes. So it's like this pre-packaged inner freedom tool when we have these dreams, or for some of us. I can't speak for everyone in the world. And so it's not much wonder the big dream or this business idea, this expression won't leave them alone, because there's a big piece of them inside that's trying to get up through the soil of the earth, or if it's a plant trying to get up through a sidewalk. As soon as it gets out into the open, then all sorts of marvelous things happen inside. Am I actually answering the question now, or have I gone off on a bit of a side trail?
In order for me to answer that, I would probably have to remember exactly the question I asked, which I don't. So
right.
we're just in it.
We're good.
If we can agree to just enjoy the rambling, meandering paths that we may take, I think that's golden. That's just how I like it.
Perfect. If anyone's listening to this is where the listenership starts to die off. What the fuck are they talking about?
No, I have the most self-indulgent podcast.
Wonderful.
And I believe in self-indulgence as a way of life.
Perfect.
Like, if I'm going to create a business, let me be completely self-indulgent. I don't think that that's a bad thing at all.
No,
because truly, if you think about, let's go back to those plants, right? When a tomato plant has everything that it needs to grow and flourish and blossom and reproduce, and what does it do? It creates fruit that gets shared naturally with the world, right?
Nice work.
Same thing with asparagus and flowers and whatever else, like anything that you are. So be your self-indulgent self the most that you can. And just that's good for everybody. That's what I think.
That's fantastic. It's like this orchid, and there's 8 different kinds of nutrients it needs to grow, and there's 2 still sitting over there, and it says, no, I don't need those. I'm fine. Thank you very much. Why the fuck would you say no to that? Like, that's nourishment that it doesn't make any sense to not be self-indulgent in this way.
Yeah. What are the things? So if we were going to translate this beautiful metaphor of gardening and seeds and hearing the message of your heart that comes in the form of a big dream, which I love that. That's a beautiful thing to say, way to express it. What are the things that you see for people to consider? So you said there's a bit of structure in that, like things to consider to help support that big dream and following the message of your heart.
It's a great question. Like, I have the structure that I can certainly and probably will say right now, but I'm wondering if I could preface it by saying, in some environmental conditions that kind of come without saying but should be said, is I think one of the conditions to get this out is often someone who will listen to us and listen well to us and listen actively with us, which is I don't know you well, and I already know you do that extremely well, and I think probably, unfortunately, it's a little bit of a rare thing in the world. Certainly, there's a lot of people come to me who don't want my advice, and that's completely fine. They don't have anyone that listens like I do in their entourage, or at least without judgment or something. So I think that's like answer one, and I'm kind of curious if it might be answer major right there. Like, if everything else is really just, these are Alex's ideas of a structure, these are Steph's idea of a structure, it does matter, but does it matter as much as the environmental conditions of listening? I'm thinking like of a terrible analogy, but if you had 2 kids and you paid attention to one and you didn't pay attention to the other, you know how that's going to work out. And so people, yeah, people really need people with something, maybe all people, but let's talk about people with big dreams right now. I think they need someone to listen well um, to that. Maybe everything else is superfluous. Do you have any thoughts?
Mm.
Not sure if I ever said that out loud before, so I'm not even sure if it's true, but it kind of feels like it might be.
I love that answer, Alex. And I'll tell you a little bit about how that looks to me. When somebody really listens and they're listening with no agenda, without judgment, and without a lot on their mind. So they're really not doing a lot of their own thinking,
Well said.
Right?
Good point.
There's a space that opens up in that where all of those things that are the seeds inside of that person have a chance to sort of let themselves be known. It's almost like the person starts to notice that they're there and they can just talk about them. And there's a quiet that happens. I think that listening that way brings presence. It's meditative. If we settle into it that way.
Oh, I love
which
it.
helps the other person to settle. And then they start to hear their own inner nudges. They start to feel the stirrings and they can hear. It's just really useful to actually have a space where you can hear yourself think. Because just like you did just a couple seconds ago, just like I notice all the time, I'm like, oh, isn't that interesting that I said that? I didn't know I was going to say that. And you said, is that really true? Let's explore it. Let's see. And I suspect that, yeah, that's it. Okay, so I'm gonna out myself now, Alex. So
here we go.
You've prompted this. You said like, it's really not about the big dream. I know I've got the big dream, but it's not about the big dream, right? So I don't even feel like I can call myself a business coach anymore. Now, I happen to play with a lot of entrepreneurs, but it's not about business. What it's really about is it's really, truly, it's a spiritual awakening. What I'm doing is just helping people to connect with what they actually are, who they actually are, and how this beautiful design of being human works. And then when they get that, like when we get a sense of this amazing journey that we have, this adventure of being human, of being the infinite potential of the universe in a form that we call a human, in a specific form that we may call Alex or Stephanie. And we really start to see that playing in business is amazing and it's so much fun. And it comes from inside instead of trying to change all the things on the outside so that we can feel okay, like we actually know what we are. And so that's actually what I'm doing anymore. And it almost feels like a sham sometimes to call myself a business coach now. I'm like, no, and I think I'm clear enough about it that by the time people come to me, usually they have a sense of
right.
it. Like if you want
filtered well along the way.
If you think you're going to come to me and I'm going to like tell you the strategies to implement and guarantee these particular, no, okay. You haven't been paying attention to what I'm doing, which is fine, but it doesn't happen.
You get through my form.
like really, without knowing this. But even that, like I would welcome even that because wow, we're all such beautiful beings with so much creation. Like I can't help but see how the universe is creating through us all the time. And for me, so you're like this seeds in people, right? What I have a sense for, I feel like there are these co-creations dancing around people. It's like the universe is inviting people to all kinds of things. And all I have to do is sit down and talk with them for a couple minutes and ask a few questions. And I'm like, oh, what's that? Oh my gosh, what's that? And it's like, and I have a sense of what would love to be created through them. However, they get to choose. Yeah, like that's how it feels to me. I think it's similar to what you're saying, but it's just how my experience of it.
Of course.
And so I'll kind of toss things out and say I talk about flipping over stones. See here, I'm changing my metaphors already. Like what's under there? Yeah. What's oh my goodness. What's that? Right. And just play a little bit in there and see. And oftentimes the things that are the possibilities around them we might only just touch on it in our time together. So they come to something. Usually people who come to me have a business, have an idea, have a thing usually, or they have something and they know it's time to reinvent. Like I need version 2.0 or 3.0 because this just doesn't cut it anymore. I'm just not having fun with this thing. I still love it, but what's going on? So there's something bigger than what they know that wants to move through them. And that's kind of what I'm playing around and poking at. And often we just begin to touch it in our time together. And it's not for 6 months, a year or more after we have our fun together.
That makes total sense.
That it actually starts to show up in their life, which was a little puzzling to me because I often find that what they come in with is, I'll tell you this too. See, you're getting all kinds of confessions out of me, Alex. I see why your clients must like you because I'm like,
my calling. I should be an investigator or a spy.
or a priest, perhaps.
True. I don't know about that.
Yeah. So it's like I have tried. In the past, I used to be a teacher who taught strategies and like follow the system because I love connecting with people and sharing with people. And I don't do a lot of teaching anymore. It's certainly not the way I used to. Yeah. It's more of leading experiences and explorations. That's more what I'm interested in. But every once in a while, I play with, I'm going to create this journey. So I have this like messaging journey. I'm like, okay, they're going to be different stages. And they're loose enough that, people could flow within them and find their own message. Like it's a messaging journey, right? So it's got to be unique. And inevitably, I'll do this like 8-week thing. And by week 4, it's like, we're doing a 180. Like, and I'm throwing it all up in the air and going, okay, guess we're going this way now.
Right,
and it's
right. The plan got us started.
Yeah, it's a mutual agreement, by the way. It's not like it's been hijacked or this, and I check in, but it does not serve people for me to just follow a script when there's something truly alive that wants to emerge. Like, why wouldn't we follow that? And I can't tell you what that's going to be on day 1. We won't know till we get there.
It's ideal. It's absolutely ideal. How can there be a structure? I mean, a one size fits all structure. It doesn't even make any sense when business is a social sport. It's a spiritual sport. It's an inner development sport. And we never know how another person is going to react in any given moment. So how can there be a formula for that? Anyway, I love everything that you're saying. I have this image in my head of, I don't know, maybe I could improve upon this with some thought, but just some curtained doorways around the person, around both of you. You got a table, you got cards out, and knowing you probably have colors and markers and everything else out. But there's got these, curtain doorways, and you go, okay, ready? Get your pen ready. What do you think of that? Oh my God. So, new ideas come out. It's fantastic. All these I could see a lot of new influences in your client's life as a result of going through a process like this with you and you holding the container for it. Yeah. How would it be approached otherwise? Like I'm imagining the average person, I can probably even speak for myself to some extent, but the average person will sit down and they're trying to make something new happen, is that they sit down with their pen and the paper or their computer and they think basically along similar lines as they have already. So you're basically throwing them in the middle of a theme park and taking them for a ride on the Ferris wheel and saying, well, what do you think of it from up here? Well, looks kind of different from up here. I think I might do that differently.
Oh, it's one of my favorite things to do is just use play as a way to get us out of even being to the point of being crazy and ridiculous, to break us out of the box we don't even know that we're in.
There's your quote of the century right there.
It's just, and plus it's so much more fun. It takes sometimes a little bit of coaxing to get people to do that. We have so much thinking about business and profit and money and selling and all the rest of the things that we think come with business, ugh. But when we do,
exactly the right response to that.
Thank you.
Kind of a sick sort of sound. It wasn't even a word. It was like I'm going to throw up.
Yes, it was my vomit noise, definitely.
Yeah, I like it.
Hurl. Hurl is the word I would use for that.
Can you put an emoji on the screen later?
Yeah.
It's true. It's like an unlearning process. I'm still unlearning, and I've been at this for a long time, nearly 20 years. And amazes me that another week will go by and I'm still unlearning something. Like, what do you think marketing actually is? Or what do you think business actually is? And how does money work? And it just, you're right, it comes prepackaged with a big, one of my big things is that I carry, the flame for is lifestyle, because you see people, like if I say picture a dentist office, you can picture it. Picture an acupuncturist office, you can picture it. It's like, no, there's no template that one is forced to follow necessarily, depending on the field. And I got it out of like commercial diving into Reiki. I found what I love to do, which is still what I love to do, is energy work. And I built myself a prison in which to perform Reiki in, and it took me years to realize why I was unhappy going to work when I found what I love to do finally. And it's because I love energy work. I don't like being in an office. It never occurred to me. It's embarrassing to admit it, but I see this around me all the time to this day. And so that's a drum that I beat with a lot of yang, actually. Bang, 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 bang. Listen to me here. Anybody who'll stand still long enough, listen to me here. Just to consider it, because if you want an office, then that's great. And I know people that do want an office because they're at home with kids and the chaos and all that kind. An office is an oasis for them. But choose it because that's what you want versus that's what you have to do. I think I'm responding to what you said.
I think you are too.
Once again, I can't remember.
So we're going to say, yes, you are.
We're going to say yes. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Not sure where I'm going there, but just lifestyle, I guess. And I remember where I was going is that business comes with this set of prescriptions that we don't even realize that we're inheriting. When I was first trying to sell my Reiki sessions here, and when I moved back to Canada in Guelph, and I joined the Chamber of Commerce, and I went to Tuesday morning networking business breakfasts with my leather shoes on and a trench coat that my wife bought me so I'd fit in with these Chamber of Commerce folks. I made some of the best friends of my life there, actually. So I got that out of it. But it was painful thinking back. Trying to flog Reiki sessions at the Chamber of Commerce is not an easy, Jesus, it's just not the right fit. It'd be easier if I was a real estate agent or something. And so there, another example of how business came to me and to many of us. Luckily, some people have seemed to avoid it, all this whole set of prescriptions, but most of us haven't. And here's how you need to market your business is what no one told me, but I picked up from the world. And then I met Tad Hargrave, and thankfully he unraveled all that for me.
Oh, yeah. One of the things I started talking about a couple years ago was unmarketing. And it's not a strategy. It's not an alternative to marketing. In fact, it's kind of a joke the way I talk about it. Unmarketing is, you don't do marketing anymore. What if you didn't? Because guess what? You've made up marketing to be this big, ugly, scary, icky, salesy, horrible thing. Don't do that. Now there's just you doing what you love and sharing it with people. How would you like to share it? What would be fun? What would be interesting? There are a million ways or more that you can do that. And it just sort of it's like a clean slate. Like you just don't do that anymore. And we don't realize how many stories we're making up about so many things. Anything, I guarantee, anything that feels uptight, feels uncomfortable, feels impossible, unacceptable, we have a story about it. Because there's what is, there's reality, there's a fact, and then there's the story that we make up about it. And that's what tortures us, not the thing. There are obstacles, absolutely. There are challenges, hell yes. But we're making up the part that's painful. And when we can see that, it gets a lot easier.
The question in my head of if on marketing, then what would be What would be unbusiness?
It would be throwing out all your ideas. Let's make it up, Alex.
Okay.
You throw out all your ideas about what business is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, let's. And
Us coaches will flog any insight we can we can tame. I got something else figured out. Sales page.
I think it's what you're doing. Unbusiness is living your life, period, and allowing it to be a life of abundance. Like living your life in such a way that your needs are met and you naturally, from the overflow of your abundance being met, share and create and provide for the world, right? Like that's at least my initial stab at it. What unbusiness would be like.
Job done, I think, Steph. Next topic. That's great.
You don't have anything to add to that? Come on, Alex. I know, because I think you're doing it with, it sounds like that's what you're doing. It's like, how do you want to live? Where do you want to be? Who do you want to hang out with? Like, what would you love to create? What's your created life? And then, okay, well, working backwards, like kind of, or playfully, like looking at these particular things. I'm guessing there's some specific things to look at. Like, okay, let's start exploring.
I notice you've had your word playfully there, though. Yeah. Yeah.
I did.
A bit of Steph's spice on the top of it.
Well, it's hard not to do that.
Perfect.
Yeah.
We wouldn't want you to stop. No, you're right. There's an exercise that I do with clients, which I guess I won't even try to explain it. I'll just tell you what it is. It's called Locked in a Coffee Shop. And it's that if you're in a new city or town someplace, very exciting, beautiful sunny day, and you're very excited to be there, and you're exploring, and you come around the corner and you spy this jaw-droppingly amazing coffee shop of some sort. Whatever picture comes to your mind is perfect. But anyway, you go in the coffee shop because you can't help yourself. And there's some people in there. It's not too crowded, but there's some people in there. And you think, this is where I want to be for a bit. So you get yourself coffee or some kind of drink, and you're about to get settled when the door gets locked accidentally. The door to the outside, and everybody's trapped. You can't get out. And so wheels are turning somewhere in the town to let everybody out, but in the meantime you're all stuck there. So what happens if 4 hours later they came and they let everyone out, they got the doors open finally, and you didn't want to go because you were having such a good time in there? It was like restorative. It was like the best time you've had in ages and ages and ages. Then my question to my client is, who was in there? What kind of people were in there? And what were you doing? Because if we can figure that out, then I think maybe what if you just design your business to do that? So those activities with those kind of people, and that'd be a dandy start, I think. So I think that corroborates what you said about you're just living your life. You're in a coffee shop. You're fucking locked there. What else are you going to do? Well, you have such a good time. And I'm thinking that's a pretty good, that's exactly the model that came to me years ago, and upon which I made the decisions to work with whom I work. Was that the right grammar? And to do the kinds of activities that I want. And so the idea kind of changed from what can I sell people to I want to do this. I wonder, is there anyone else in the world that might, like the same thing? And thankfully, a lot of us in business, we don't need thousands of people to like what we're offering. We need 20 or 200, depending on the business model. An average coach sometimes with one-on-one clients can get by with all the income they need from 20 to 40 people. So if you can find 20 to 40 people that want to be in your coffee shop, doing that kind of thing, then I think that's a very playful way, but also a highly practical way. And I see those decisions filter more easily down to the bottom line. There's no formula for sure about money, just like there's no formula about any of those other things. And sometimes it's a spiritual journey. But the route to money, I think, is easier if we're doing what we enjoy and offering what we enjoy. And so I just find it a very practical way to start designing a business as well.
Yeah. Here's something that comes up for me. So I got a bit of a trickster contrarian bent that often comes out too.
Yes, that doesn't surprise me.
And I've tried not to acknowledge it for many.
I've been waiting
for many a year. So here's the interesting thing, and I like to play both sides of this. Again, I'm saying play because it really is like that for me. On the one hand, like, yes, you actually get to create your life and your business in a way that you love, doing what you love with people you love, anyhow you want, throw out the rules, reinvent them, create your own, or don't have any at all. Whatever you want, make it up. I talk about business like a game. What game do you want to play? What's your object? What are the rules you want to play by? How do you want to set this up, right? Fun. On the one hand, like, absolutely yes. And on the other hand, what I've seen is that we get so confused about where our experience comes from. And it really looks like I'm working at this 9 to 5, or I'm stuck in an office, or I have to travel all the time and I hate it and it's making me miserable. But when we recognize, when we get in touch with what we really are, right, and start to see the freedom that we are inside and how the stories that we're telling about these things, we can fall in love with anything. And when you fall in love with yourself, with being, right, all of a sudden that 9 to 5 isn't such a suckfest.
Right.
All of a sudden you find, oh, I actually kind of like some things about it. Now you still might prefer to create something totally different. And in many cases, people will. But I've seen people come in like, I'm done with my corporate job. And I did it myself. I came from an internet marketing background and I spent close to 10 years like immersing myself in customer avatars and niches and content marketing and doing all these things and following these practices and creating tripwire products for this thing and product launch formula and whatever else, right? And I was like, no, I'm not doing that anymore. So I threw it all out. Like, I'm not going back. But then when I started to fall more in love with my life, I realized, oh, those experiences and all of that, the background, like, I actually do kind of still like some things about marketing when I don't have to do it any particular way. Like, I still like that conversation. I still dig it. It's communication. That's what it is to me. That's what marketing really is in its simplest form. It's just communicating, sharing a message. And how beautiful is that if it's your heart's message, it's authentic and it's easy and it's compelling. And you don't have to have a formula to do it. And there's very little structure necessary.
Right.
So it's sort of like, it's funny, like, fall in love with your life and then maybe you change your life, but maybe you don't have to.
Oh, right.
You know, like, and it's sort of, where do we fall on that? And so I like to play with both and see where we end up. And it's really interesting sometimes.
Me too. You and I are singing from the same choir book. For sure. And I felt, I can't speak for everybody, but I can speak for, I suppose, for the kinds of people I tend to spend most of my time with client-wise, is that both are absolutely crucial. In fact, we can't often, my work I often find is 50% inner and 50% outer. And I don't really have a terrible amount of interest in one conversation without the other. One fuels the other. When I was a commercial diver, I was 10 years at it, and I was cold and unhappy, and I was pretty good at diving itself, but not good at construction work and the kind of labor that we were doing underwater. And I never did get any better at it. And it was so not the, like, if we were talking about soils for different plants, it was so not the soil for me. And it would have actually, I don't know if it would have killed me, but it would have killed parts of the inside of me. It already was starting to. I had to get out. And I remember for the last 2 or 3 years of that, berating myself at the worst, about, like, I was starting to read spiritual books and whatnot. And Alex, you gotta turn this around. You gotta be happy with what you have. And I still agree with that. But I like to have that as 50% of the conversation, because it's also like me telling the orchid plant that you should be happy with that pine tree soil. And nothing that I say is going to fix that soil completely unless they go totally rogue, like they're Buddha now. And then that's fine. And so I do think it's possible. But what I really like is the 50-50. So we work on the inner stuff and becoming more and more playful and happy, and actually get to the point where you were describing about yourself with the marketing, so that if you are toying with a new direction, like a business or some life project, and you're not happy with what you're doing, but you remove some of the desperation out of it that way. So you're doing the internet marketing stuff based on when you like it and the parts that you like versus the desperation of having to. Very different things. I remember I still have, in fact, a very close friend and colleague, a naturopathic doctor here in Canada, who's really renowned in the country. She's amazing. But in early years, in fact, she and I used to drive together to these darn Chamber of Commerce breakfasts. And so we chatted in the car. But she said, from a naturopathic, and in those days I was Reiki master. That was my title. I didn't have Big Dream Program. I wasn't doing anything else. Reiki master. And she said, from a naturopathic doctor standpoint, she said, maybe it's true of all naturopathic doctors, I don't know, I only speak for her, is she said, I like to come at things from the outside in and the inside out at the same time. So if there's some kind of illness or imbalance in the body, I'm not going to make them suffer 3 more years just until we get to that special meditative place that fixes the original problem. I'm also going to give them balm or salve or, acupuncture, whatever it takes to soothe the outside and try to meet the inside halfway. And so it always stuck with me what she said. And I guess maybe I'm doing the same thing. I guess maybe you perhaps are doing the same thing, and maybe I shouldn't put words in your mouth. But it's also true that I think that working on outer stuff, but the right outer stuff, can lead us to the inner spot of the inner harmony as well. So I think she's right in the sense that we can come at it both directions. And I figure, as a practical guy, even though I speak like a hippie, I'm a practical guy. And I think I'm going to hedge my bets. I got this one life, I think, to live. And I'm going to approach it both ways. I'm going to approach inner happiness, and I'm going to approach this outer expression of myself and see what happens as a result. I think I'm saying the same thing you are, but I'm not sure.
There's an art to what we do, right? Like there's the truth of what we are and how this thing called life works. There are certain forces we can point to, like gravity or the laws of aerodynamics. And then there's what we choose to do with it, And that's what's so cool about it, that I don't think that there's one right or wrong approach about, how you help people transform.
No.
I think
goodness, there couldn't be.
Right. Oh, because it's unique to the individual, right?
And it's why we need so many different flavors of helpers, therapists, mentors, coaches, consultants.
Yeah. And I don't think the two are at all in opposition to each other, the outer and the inner. I think they go together. I see this more and more. And it's part of it's part of the game and the exploration I continue to be in. Is like this, there's this formlessness that we are, this infinite potential that we are. And yet there's this expression in form. There's this idea that we have for something we might call a business. And then we bring it into form. And there's a dance that happens. It's not one or the other, it's both.
Right.
and they come together. So that's kind of what I'm hearing and what you're saying. And also how I see it is that, when I'm actually settled and not caught up in my overthinking about whatever it is that's tormenting me,
Mm-hmm.
I know what to do in this moment. If I'm, what did you say? I'm a tomato plant in pine tree soil. I'm gonna get my ass up or bring some tomato, like something's gonna
Right.
occur to me. I'm not gonna force myself to stay there if that's not what I know to do to take care of
Oh,
myself,
love it. But the urge is coming from inside and part of
Yeah.
natural, organic way of being a human in the world.
Yeah. Instead of,
When the tide is coming up, I will sit myself up and move up the beach.
Yeah. Do I even have to think about that? I don't even need to think about it. Right. It's just, we actually do know what we need when we're calm, when we're settled. And a lot of times we're not calm and we're not settled. And so we can't really hear it. And it gets through anyway. Sometimes it's just a lot more painful and it takes longer, but somehow that's the miracle of it. Like it still gets through, bodies still heal, even when we don't give them what they need.
Okay. Even miraculously, of course, miraculously, but like the plant getting up through a sidewalk and you're thinking the tiny little plant and the concrete's all broken. You're thinking, how did you do that? Persistence. Where was I just going to say? I'm reading a book at the moment. I can't see his name properly. Thich Nhat Hanh. Is that how I say it? Mm-hmm. Thich Nhat Hanh. They call him Thay. Of course, he has just passed over or passed away. I'm not sure what words he would use for that. But the book is called The Zen and the Art of Saving the World. And I'm adoring the heck out of it at the moment. So that's why I'm bringing it up. But here's an example, a person that worships, that's maybe not the right word to use. Well, let's go with it until I think of a better one. Worships the inner life, like as a practicing Buddhist would. I'm nourishing some form of inner life. And at the same time, he was a peace activist under gunfire. He was on the high seas trying to rescue people out of the ocean, trying to escape from Vietnam. He built monasteries. He traveled the world and he engaged with world leaders and politicians, some of whom were extremely awkward to deal with. So he did that too. and so he was saying in his book that there's no difference between the two. And I sort of came to the conclusion afterwards of trying to think of a metaphor that would work for me. But I'm thinking I really like meditation. I do it a lot. I do it every day. In fact, I'm not even sure it's not just sort of part of who I am now. It's not so much an activity, but it's probably hours a day is what it adds up to. It's my favorite personal activity. And yet at the same time, if I'm sitting by a riverbank with a big long stick like Gandalf or something, and someone floats by me and they're fucking drowning, like, I suppose I'd stick the stick out, I'd attempt to help. I'd try to reduce suffering. And that doesn't mean I've left the meditation. That's a result of I'm here in the right place at the right time and aware enough that, oh my God, there's someone floating by. Where am I going with all that? So somehow the cross section or the inner dance, maybe to use your word, between the inner stillness and action. And someone in his book described it as, what did they say? Oh, meditation wasn't like, I can't remember the exact words, but it's not to be cold and detached from the world, from its beauty and its suffering. It's, in fact, to be able to interact with it in a much, in a better way somehow, more engaged or more still or more informed or stronger, more sustainable. And, I love these topics. I really do.
Yeah. What I've found, Alex, is that the more peace I have in my life, the more love I experience, I'm actually more accessible, more available, and more aware of what's happening outside of me in my world and the people around me and the world around me, and more engaged in helping. Because for a long time, I was feeling so unsafe in myself that it was scary to watch the news or look at what was happening in the world. And I couldn't look at it. I blocked it out. I dissociated. Now, if you would have sat down with me one-on-one, you'd probably find me to be I'm making this up, but most people have told me that I'm a compassionate and caring and thoughtful person. But, well, for example, I lived about an hour and a half north of New York City when 9/11 happened.
Mm.
People around me were devastated, including my now ex-husband, and I felt nothing. Now, if somebody was in front of me, I would feel it, but I just couldn't. I couldn't.
No.
But a couple of years ago,
bandwidth was used up.
I felt so unsafe that it was in myself, that it was too scary for me to look because it was going to cause me too much pain.
Well,
But now that I know,
don't wish you that experience or that pain, but it's a great story to illustrate the.
yeah. And now that I know I'm okay, I can open my eyes. I don't need to be in denial. I don't need to dissociate. I can look at things that are painful. I can hear stories that are like, make you want to cringe, and know that I'm okay and there's hope and I can do something. So it actually, the reverse has happened. Rather than, making me passive and I just want to meditate in my cave all the day. Mm-hmm. Instead, I actually am more involved. And that just happened. I think that's our natural state. When we know we're okay and we're calm, we're kind, we're loving, we're giving. It's only when we have angry thinking, fearful thinking, hateful thinking, do we act in ways that hurt ourselves and others.
That's beautiful. I love it. I know we're at time here, but I have a personal conviction, I suppose, or story that fuels me every day. It's why I do the work that I do, I think, is a bit like we were talking about seeds early in the conversation. I feel that it's just a personal opinion, may not be right, but I feel that the solutions to every problem that we have already exist. And the solutions are seeds in the hearts and minds of people wandering around right now today, somewhere, some sidewalk, some house, some office. Like it takes a lot of them, thousands, tens of thousands of them, but they're there already to fix the problems of the world, to bring peace. For instance, Ukraine is on all of our minds at the moment, Ukraine and the Russian people. And the solutions in my head, when I look at that, my mind goes to where are the solutions? Where are and with the knowledge that they already exist. And in whose heart are they? And in whose mind are they? And although I can't necessarily reach that person, that's where my mind goes. And so for my work, what I'm attempting to do is water seeds wherever I do find them. And I find that so many of the people that I work with are leaving jobs that they don't like, that they feel are at worst neutral in the world, but usually they think it's bad. In my commercial diving career, I work for the oil industry and I work for fish farms. That's where I earn my money. So people, and now they're teaching workshops, leading kids into the forest and connecting with nature. There are psychotherapists that are bringing their clients to a riverbank instead of an office. These are the seeds that make the most sense to me to water. And I'm thinking that it's not about that client. It is in a way when I'm with them, but it's about the future generation. So in my head, I'm always thinking of the kids. So kids today who are anywhere between 5 and 15, and they're trying to figure out what they're going to do with their lives. And it might take them another 20 years to figure that out. But when they end up in the wrong soil, I want them to remember or know somebody that did this life thing differently. That I just want them to have one exposure to somebody who did this differently and stepped off the rat race and had some form of internal human success as a result of that. And then that could have a ripple effect, and it can get to the seeds that I am not powerful enough to reach, but enough of that. And then I guess we unlock solutions. And I'm only talking about problems in the world, but beauty as well. Beauty, in fact, solves a lot of the problems. And so the books that will get written as a result of somebody knowing somebody that followed a dream, that's why I do it.
Mm. Beautiful inspiration, Alex. I see that, like, following your heart's message, following the dream that is your heart's message changes the world.
I think it might. That's as sure as I can be.
Mm. Wow, that feels like a lovely note for us to end on. So where can people find out more about you, Alex?
Well, as a result of this talk, I'm considering unmarketing, so you can't. Basically, the website's now down. I'm tormenting you. Actually, I love the unmarketing thing. I didn't mean to poke fun. No, I really like it. Actually, I'm going to have more thinking on that stuff. Where to find me? BigDreamProgram.com is my website, and from there, that I suppose that everything else comes from there. I have I've had the Big Dream Program for, well, it's coming on 20 years, and I've never actually had a program. Big Dream Program. So this is, we're in confession mode here, right? And I've never had a program. So I've had a mixture of dozens and dozens of different workshops that I've traveled around and that I've done online, and I've had one-on-one sessions and whatnot. But I started writing a book a year and a half ago. It's a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. So I'm still writing the book, but it's forced me to sort of collate or collect or kind of Marie Kondo 20 years worth of work and throw it all on the bed and figure out what I want to keep and what I don't. Everything. Where I'm leading up to is that I started a membership site which is going to have levels in it, like level 1, level 2, and whatnot. It's not a formula, but it is an environment that changes over time. And the membership site, level 1, is now up, and it's called the Fewer Regrets Club. So that's the thing I'm flogging these days, as you can tell here. A Fewer Regrets Club, which doesn't even have to be for anybody in business. In fact, it's a little broader than that. And we run people through a variety of canvases, which are not for everybody because they're a little bit of hard questions. But the canvases are, if you were going to die, if you found out you were going to die, sorry, I know that's tough, not for everybody. La, 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 if you can't handle this, somebody. If you found out you're going to die in a year, what would you regret or try to squeeze in or wish you had done before it was this, you only had a year? What if you, and then we have several canvases. What if you found out you had a month? What are the answers then? The answers are different. What if you had a week? So what if you had a day? What if you had an hour? What if you had 10 years? And so we have these canvases, and what I'm finding is people answer very differently to each one. And I just find it a very cool, if a little bit harsh, way to kind of get out on paper, I guess this is what matters to me now anyways. And then we actually get started on those things. And there is checklists, and there is like yang, like let's get shit done. Every Saturday we have get her done parties and whatnot. But it's also using those things as an invitation to spiritual reflection or inner reflection or different sorts of tools so that we can bring them to bear in level 2 on the larger thing, like the business or whatever. So was that actually appropriate? I didn't mean to do such a big flog for my membership.
Sure, it
site.
was.
Anyway, that's what I'm up to.
Flogging is such a violent word to me. I'm like, you're flogging it. Oh my.
It is, I suppose. I'm from the Maritimes. I never even thought to question the word. You're right. It is violent.
Wow. Yes. Perfectly appropriate. I think it's lovely what you're doing, and I'm happy to have people know about it. So cool. Well, thank you so very much, Alex, for sharing what is your big dream or a part of it.
Thank you so much. I'm so grateful.
Thanks so much for joining me for today's Wildspire conversation. If you'd like to receive a weekly Wildspire email from me filled with inspiring stories, unmarketing experiments, tips for playing your way to impact and income without the hustle and hype, insights from my spiritual business journey, and more, go to theawakenedbusiness.com/Wildspire. Until next time, may you know yourself as the gorgeous wild creation you are.